In an ancient world, where lifespans stretched for centuries and the heavens touched the earth in unimaginable ways, a series of mysterious and supernatural events unfolded. Picture a time when angels and humans walked side by side, where giants roamed the earth, and where the line between good and evil was thin and volatile. This is not a tale of fiction, but an account from the earliest pages of humanity, as recorded in one of the most ancient and revered books of history. Prepare to delve into the depths of divine intrigues, celestial betrayals, and humanity's eternal quest for redemption. What happened before the flood that forever changed the course of human existence? Let's explore together. What was life like before the flood? In the early chapters of the Bible, especially in the book of Genesis, we encounter a world vastly different from ours, a world before the Great Flood. This era, often shrouded in layers of interpretation, is characterized by extended lifespans, divine human interactions, and closeness with God. The creation story introduces characters such as Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, and eventually Noah, offering us glimpses into a life that, in some ways, is familiar to us. Various forces converge to bring about the flood. Satan and the fallen angels play crucial roles in this narrative. The first event leading to the flood occurred even before the creation of the world. This event was the creation of the sons of God. But before we dive into this topic, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to be alerted whenever we post a new video. In the book of Job, God reveals an event that predates the creation of the world. Job 38:4-7 asks, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation, while the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" It is disclosed that angelic beings, known as morning stars and sons of God, witnessed the creation of the earth. They celebrated God's power, glory, and wisdom throughout the process. Before the flood, Satan was already a fallen being. The Bible makes brief mentions of the fallen angels, because the vast majority of angels in heaven never lost their way or turned to evil. However, a few made that choice. We must remember that heaven was originally intended to be their eternal home, but they fell from it. What led to this? Angels have free will, and their fallen state reflects this free agency. The book of Jude is explicit about this. Jude verses 5 and 6, Amplified Bible, remind us, "And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority, but abandoned their own home, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day." It indicates that the angels did not maintain their appointed position. They were created to bring glory to God, just like humans, but abandoned their divine purpose. Despite this, these angels left their beginning, which is another way of saying they abandoned their original position in heaven. Satan, who masquerades as an angel of light, commands these angels and acts as their leader. The Great Rebellion, as it is often called, was an event where Satan and a portion of heaven's angels waged war against God and his angels in an attempt to overthrow divine authority. Satan, in his cunning, attempted to dethrone his creator, but was defeated. Jesus, who was present, gives us an account of this. He speaks of the glory and majesty he shared with God the Father before the world existed. John 17:5, Amplified Bible, tells us, "And now, Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory I had with you before the world began." Before the creation of the earth, there was God, and God had majesty with his Son. Jesus proclaims, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." As we can see, Satan is much more than just a red figure with horns and a trident. He is an ancient being with real spiritual power, which he uses for evil and selfish purposes. As the Apostle Paul stated in Ephesians 6:12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Satan's kingdom is highly organized, with different spheres and levels of authority, and his domains are in the heavenly realms. This is a striking truth. Many are surprised to hear about the organization of Satan's kingdom, yet the Bible provides several clear indications about this. A spiritual war was unleashed. It is a clash between two kingdoms, one ruled by God, the Prince of Peace, and the other ruled by Satan, the Prince of Darkness. After being expelled from heaven, Satan and his followers swore mutual allegiance and formed the rebel kingdom. In the Garden of Eden, Satan launched his first assault on God's authority on earth. Viewing earth as his domain, he saw Adam and Eve as God's invaders in his territory. With the divine intention for humanity to inhabit the earth and establish his kingdom, Satan knew he needed a plan. When God created the world, there was a place called Eden. In Hebrew, Eden means joy or delight. It was a place of provision where man could meet with God, as written in Genesis 3, verse 8. However, in this perfect garden, there was a special tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Satan, aiming to destroy mankind's destiny, approached Eve with strategic tactics. First, he instilled doubt. Did God really say? Genesis 3, verse 1. Then he made assumptions, leading Eve to question the real consequences of her action. You will not certainly die. Genesis 3, verse 4. Finally, he tempted her with desires. Disappointed by their disobedience, God no longer allowed them to remain in the garden. Although Adam and Eve failed by eating the forbidden fruit, God, in his mercy, made a redemptive promise that the seed of the woman would crush the serpent's head, Genesis 3, verse 15, foreshadowing the coming of Christ. But humanity's challenges did not stop there. In Genesis 4, we find the sad narrative of the first murder, Cain and Abel. Although Adam and Eve had been exiled, God continued to bless them. Eve gave birth to two sons, Cain and Abel, with the Lord's help. Both, growing up with stories about God, knew the importance of making offerings to the Creator. However, while God accepted Abel's offering, Cain's offering was not accepted. This sparked jealousy and anger in Cain. Despite divine warnings, Cain killed his brother in an act of anger and jealousy. When questioned by God about Abel's whereabouts, he responded disdainfully, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Genesis 4, verse 9. However, God, in his justice and mercy, placed a mark on Cain to protect him from vengeance, stating that anyone who killed him would suffer sevenfold. Genesis 4, verse 15 recounts how Cain was punished by becoming a restless wanderer, distant from his family and home. After the divine punishment, he settled in a land called the land of Nod, east of Eden. Here, Cain built a city and named it after his son, Enoch. Among his descendants were influential people of that time. Jabal, considered the father of those who lived in tents and raised livestock. Jubal, regarded as the father of all who played stringed instruments and flutes. And Tubal-Cain, a master in the craft of forging tools of bronze and iron. Genesis 4, verses 17 to 22. After the punishment of Cain, the Bible depicts the story of two lineages. Unfortunately, Cain's violent behavior was passed down through his lineage, culminating in Lamech, his great-great-grandson, who boasted of his violence. The world initially created in perfection was found within just 4 generations, steeped in blood and defying the divine design for marriage. Before the flood, polygamy also proliferated, mainly through the lineage of Cain. In contrast to this lineage, God gave Eve a new son, named Seth, in place of Abel. Seth represented a renewal of the type of worship that Abel practiced, a humble and sincere devotion to God, unlike the proud worship of Cain, Jude verse 11. It is no surprise that centuries later, when God needed an obedient servant to build the ark, he chose Noah, a descendant of Seth. Cain's legacy was dual. On one hand, his lineage was innovative and creative. On the other, marked by conflict and violence. As generations passed after Adam, the world became populated, but also corrupted. Wickedness was everywhere, and human relations were characterized by lies, theft, and murder. During this period, humans lived extraordinarily long lives. This was a time when humanity still had a close connection to its origins. Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters after Cain and Abel, and with the growth of their family, civilization itself emerged. Genesis 5 verse 4 states that after the birth of Seth, Adam lived over 800 years and had other sons and daughters. The population began to grow exponentially. Besides Cain and Abel, Seth was another son of Adam who had descendants, including Enoch, Methuselah, and finally, Noah. Adam, the first man, lived 930 years, Genesis 5, verse 5. His descendants also had long lives. Seth lived 912 years, Genesis 5, verse 8. And Enoch lived 905 years, Genesis 5, verse 11. As generations succeeded, they taught their children about the land, agriculture, animal husbandry, and connection with God. This group of people was special as it carried the direct lineage of the first humans, keeping alive the traditions and teachings of their ancestors. Despite their long lives and vast wisdom, these early humans were not exempt from problems that often afflict humanity, such as jealousy, anger, and even violence. However, among them emerged a notable man named Enoch. In Genesis 5, we are first introduced to an Enoch, son of Cain. However, there is another Enoch mentioned in Genesis 5, verse 21. After 65 years of life, Enoch became the father of Methuselah. This son would stand out for becoming the longest-lived man ever recorded in the Scriptures. Through the genealogical studies of the Bible, we discover that Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah, Genesis 5, verses 22 to 24. While many of his contemporaries were mentioned only by their births and descendants, Enoch stands out vividly. His relationship with God was so profound that instead of dying like all the others, God took him directly to himself. His legacy, although brief, is powerful. He serves as a shining example for all generations, reminding us to seek sincere and intense communion with God. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Genesis 5, verse 24. His life is, in a way, a foreshadowing of the idea of the rapture, a phenomenon where the faithful are taken directly to heaven. The book of Hebrews refers to men of such intense faith that the world was not worthy of them. But not everything was harmonious at that time. Even living long years, not all lived well. As time passed, the population grew, and with it, new challenges emerged. Tribes and clans formed, originating from the original patriarchs, and they occupied new lands. As society grew, new professions arose. People could no longer be just shepherds or farmers. Cain, for example, was a tiller of the ground, Genesis 4, verse 2, while his brother Abel was a shepherd, suggesting that professions began to diversify early on. Over time, more specialized professions appeared. Tubal-Cain, a descendant of Cain, became a master of all craftsmen in bronze and iron, Genesis 4, verse 22. Music also began to play a role, with Jubal, another descendant of Cain, becoming the father of all who play the harp and flute, Genesis 4, verse 21. This diversification allowed society to become more complex and organized, paving the way for more advanced civilizations. However, despite the advancements in cultural growth, the era before the Great Flood was not one of peace or joy. The Bible tells us that the Lord observed the growing wickedness in the human heart and the need for intervention, signaling the imminence of significant changes in the course of human history. The wickedness of the human race had reached alarming levels on earth, to the point that every thought and intention of the human heart was continually evil. Genesis 6, verse 5. Before the flood, humanity experienced unprecedented expansion. Families became tribes, roles evolved into professions, and the foundations of civilization were established. However, in the shadow of this progress, a sinister invasion occurred, the invasion of the Nephilim. Satan, aiming to corrupt the human lineage, especially the lineage that would lead to the Messiah, mobilized his evil legions to contaminate humanity. Genesis 6, verses 1 and 2. When these sons of God, often interpreted as angels, saw the beauty of the daughters of men, they took them as wives. In the book of Job, these beings are characterized as angels. We know from the biblical narrative that a third of the angels followed Satan in his rebellion, while 2/3 remained loyal to God. God's kingdom was thriving in number and strength. Seeing this, the Prince of Darkness summoned his fallen legions to attack humanity. These rebellious angels produced with human women the Nephilim, giants, whose very name in Hebrew suggests fallen, Genesis 6. This event, coupled with the growing wickedness of humanity, created a scenario of profound corruption and distance from God. The term sons of God is often interpreted as fallen angels or men possessed by demons, while daughters of men refers to human women. The scriptures in Genesis 6, verses 1 to 5, vividly portray the chaotic situation on earth before the flood. It is said that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, Genesis 6, verses 3 to 5. The wickedness of humanity grew so much that God lamented the depraved condition of the earth. Instead of peace and goodness, the world was filled with sin, violence, and moral corruption. Imagine a world where ethics and morality are abandoned, and selfishness prevails. Honesty, integrity, and kindness have become alien ideals, while deceit and manipulation are the norm. In this bleak scenario, families turned into battlegrounds of betrayal, neighbors exploited each other, and governments became oppressive, defending the dominion of the powerful over the weak. In the midst of this disorder, the Nephilim appeared. These creatures, grand in stature and strength, further exacerbated the world's problems. Many admired, feared, or even worshipped them, drifting even further from the true God. Their strength and dominant presence made them the center of attention, but ironically, they also accelerated humanity's descent into the darkness of sin. In this tumultuous environment, God witnessed the severity of human corruption and the urgent need for divine intervention to restore order and justice. The ark was not just a means of salvation, but also a symbol of God's care and providence for humanity. God knew that, despite the corruption and wickedness of the earth, there was still hope in Noah and his family. To preserve life, he gave Noah detailed instructions on how to build the ark and which animals to take with him, according to Genesis 6, verses 19 to 20. God commanded Noah to take a pair of each species, ensuring the preservation of life's diversity on earth after the flood. The selection of animals was not random. God had chosen representatives from all species, from the humblest to the most majestic. This underscores God's love and care for all his creatures. It is also important to highlight Noah's faith throughout this process. He obeyed God without question, even when the instructions seemed strange or challenging. In a time when the idea of a global flood was unimaginable, Noah stood firm in his faith and trusted in God's word. Noah and his family worked tirelessly on building the ark, and despite mockery and disbelief from the society around them, they remained committed to their mission. One can imagine Noah's dedication and determination as he spent decades building this monumental vessel, nurturing hope for a new beginning. Moreover, Noah also took on the role of a preacher of righteousness, 2 Peter 2, verse 5, warning people about the impending judgment and calling them to repentance. Unfortunately, his warnings fell on deaf ears, and humanity continued in its rebellion against God. When the day of the flood finally arrived, the ark, built with divine precision, proved to be the perfect refuge against the storm. It sailed over the waters that covered the earth, saving Noah's family and a remnant of animal life. This journey was not just a physical escape, but also a spiritual journey, where faith and obedience were tested to the limit. After the flood, God established a covenant with Noah. He promised never to destroy the earth with a flood again, and gave the rainbow as a sign of this promise, Genesis 9, verses 11 and 17. The story of Noah and the ark teaches us about God's righteousness, mercy, and faithfulness, and serves as an eternal reminder of the importance of faith and obedience, even in the face of challenging circumstances. Thus, the ark became a mobile sanctuary, a living representation of God's effort to save his creation from destruction. God's choices for clean and unclean animals had specific meanings. While the unclean animals were taken in pairs, the clean animals were taken in groups of 7, perhaps to ensure that there were enough animals for sacrifices and consumption after the flood. Genesis 8, verse 20. During this time, Noah's faith was constantly tested. While he diligently followed divine instructions, the society around him continued its life as if nothing was about to change. The disbelief of the population only grew as they saw the righteous man dedicating himself to a project that seemed absurd to human eyes. However, Noah never wavered. He trusted in God and understood that the Lord had a greater plan, even if he could not see it in its entirety. Looking back, we wonder, how did Noah maintain his unwavering faith amid so much scorn and mockery? The answer lies in the intimate and trusting relationship he maintained with God. Finally, after years of construction and meticulous preparation, the time came to enter the ark. Genesis 7, verses 11 and 12 narrates, "All the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights." The flood, so widely discredited, had begun. Inside the ark, Noah and his family remained protected, along with the animals God had instructed to bring. While the waters covered the earth and everything that had the breath of life perished, inside the ark reigned peace and divine protection. This period in the ark was not just a time of physical preservation, but also a moment of reflection and spiritual renewal. Noah and his family were constantly reminded of the severity of human disobedience, but also of God's mercy and faithfulness. At the end of the flood, as they left the ark, they were greeted with a transformed world, an earth cleansed of the wickedness that had consumed it. Genesis 8, verses 15 to 17 describes God instructing Noah to leave the ark and populate the earth. Thus, the story of Noah, more than a narrative about judgment, is a lesson about God's redeeming grace. It highlights the importance of obedience, faith, and perseverance in the face of challenges, and shows us that even in the darkest moments, God never abandons those who trust in Him.